So the goal for today is for us to find meaning in this day, in fasting. We're going to look at it through the lens of an athlete. Hopefully by doing this, we'll have the opportunity to experience and to relive certain ideas that are familiar to us. And by doing this, it may make today a little bit more relatable, a little bit more understandable. I want to start off by quoting NBA All-Star Allen Iverson. Was once at a press conference, and the reporters were questioning him about his commitment to the team and his commitment to basketball. And they asked him, Allen, you weren't at the last team practice. How committed are you to the team, and do you even care about what's going on? And Allen Iverson famously was quoted saying the following, we're not talking about a game, we're talking about practice. And for Allen Iverson, he couldn't understand how the reporters were asking him about something as tedious, something as nonsensical as practice. Practice doesn't affect the game, according to Allen Iverson. You don't win in practice, you win in the game. Why are we not talking about the game that I play? Why are we not talking about the hustle and the heart that I put in when I'm playing in a game? And instead you want to bother me about practice. So this idea brings to mind the concept of external motivation versus internal motivation. Right? Internal motivation is when I feel motivated to do something because innately I feel that I should be doing something about whatever it is that I'm doing. And external is I need outside forces to help dictate for me what it is that I should be doing. So we'll go through some examples that might sound familiar to some of us. We walk home from school one day and we're welcomed by mom, and she goes, why don't you study for your test? And what's the first idea that comes to mind, whether or not this is true? Mom, the test is not even tomorrow. Why would I bother studying for a test? What on earth are you talking about? Another idea. Teacher assigns a report, and she lets you know it's due in 2 weeks. The first idea that comes to every single person's head in that room is, talk to me in 1 week and 6 days from now. Then I'll get something started. And so we need external forces, we need something outside of what we're thinking about in order for us to feel motivated to do something. Now, most of us in this room have had the opportunity to play on teams. We've had the opportunity to partake in maybe practices. And I'd like for some of us in this room, if you don't mind participating, if you can share with me, what does it look like and what does it feel like when you first start out participating on the team before the season even starts? What does that team look like and what does it feel like before the season starts? And then tell me what we look like during or after the season starts. Anybody have any thoughts about what we look like or feel like? Eli. So we feel nervous and scared, but talk to me about the difference in the look. How does the team look if you were a spectator observing the first team practice of the year, and that same spectator had the opportunity to look at that same team 1 month, 2 months into the process? What does it look like? What's the difference? Aslan. Okay, any other thoughts? Jack, how do we look? Love that thought. Anybody else? Claude? So beginning we look sloppy. Towards the end we kind of look a little bit more organized. Okay? Any other thoughts? Okay. So I love what I'm hearing from this room, and you're all on point. Fast forwarding into the season, the team looks more organized. We look more prepared. We feel confident in what it is that we're doing, and there's a better understanding of what it is that we're doing. Perhaps the first couple of practices, coach is calling out all of these plays, he's telling us to stand in these certain spots, and we're not really sure what's going on. But then later on, as we do it and we get more familiar with what it is that we're doing, we feel more confident and we understand what it is that we're doing. So now that we recognize that there's definitely a difference, and it's a positive difference, what goes on in practice from your experience that you feel allows for this difference to take place? Any thoughts? What's happening in practice that we go from nervousness to confident, that we go from messy to organized? Ronnie. So we're learning each other's strengths through practice. Good. Any other thoughts? So I'll share a few. Number one, we get the opportunity to make mistakes. Because when you experience practice and you do something, we'll call it wrong, coach has an opportunity to say, no, this is the way you do it. But think about it for a second. If you went through practice and you had no mistakes, it was flawless, what would coach be talking to you about? What would he have the opportunity to fix or to correct to make you better for the next practices? Maybe you're doing a film review, coach gets to show you some of the stuff that you guys have experienced during your games. Maybe there's a motivational speech that coach has to offer. There's a number of reasons, but the bottom line is that when you experience practice, it makes a difference. And we see it. We see it in the results. So now here's my question. We recognize the significance of practice. We understand that it means something and that it helps us and it makes us better and it makes the experience more meaningful. So the question is very simple. Why is it that when we have a day like today, chances are, myself included, there's very little prep work that goes into a day like today? There's not so much of an understanding as to what I'm doing and how I should be doing it. And I think the problem is very simple. The less I understand and the less practice I can put into whatever experience that I'm doing, the less meaningful the experience will be. So I want to focus on 3 different ideas that may help us have a more meaningful Tish'a BeAb experience. The 3 ideas are as follows. Number 1, we'll focus on identity. Number 2, we'll focus on process. And number 3, we'll focus on teamwork. I'd like you to relive an experience playing sports, specifically when you're playing at home. What is that experience like for you? What does it do for you when you have the opportunity to play at home? Anybody have any thoughts? Claude. Okay, good, but specifically playing at home versus playing on the road. What is it to be playing at home? What does that do for me that makes it different about that experience? Marvin. Great. The crowd is cheering us on, they're pumping us up, they're making me feel great. Fantastic. Any other thoughts? Eli. Okay, so we're going to get to the flip side in a second, but specifically about playing at home, right? So Marvin mentioned crowd that might be cheering us on and making us feel good. Okay, something else that might help us is the court dimension. right? You know that when you play at home, the court is a certain size, and then you go to another team's gym, and it makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable. It's a little bit smaller, it's a little bit bigger, I'm not used to it, right? The equipment, right? Some of us have a favorite basketball to play with, a favorite stick to use, whatever it may be. Now I want you to relive an experience of playing in a hostile environment, the opposite. Playing in a stadium or playing in a gym where the crowd is out to get you. They're booing you every opportunity possible. They're making your life miserable. Think about that experience for a second. Jody. Okay, good thought. Okay, great. So there's something special about playing at home. Okay, and the statistics are there to prove it to us. Statistically speaking, when professional teams play at home, they are more likely to win a game. In sports like football and hockey, teams at home win 55% of the time. In a sport like basketball, your home team has a likelihood of 60% chance to win that game. Playing at home does something for us. It makes us feel more confident, it makes us feel secure, and it allows me to play better when I'm in that environment. But boys, today's a day where we recognize and we remember that we feel a little bit of loss as a Jewish nation. The Beit HaMikdash was destroyed not once but twice on this day. We lost our home. We lost the opportunity to connect to God. We lost the opportunity to unite Jewish people in a common place. And we lost the opportunity to do something even more special. I want you to understand what the Beit HaMikdash meant to us. I was reading in the SCA Reader from Rabbi Cordozo about Reach Nihoach Ladonai. And he says in this article that korbanot, right, in the Beit HaMikdash, they were brought for us to rectify our wrongdoings. So what was this good smell? Reach Nihoach Ladonai. What was this smell? He says the following. He says, you know when you go either to a restaurant or maybe you're sitting at home and you smell the food right out of the oven, right out of wherever it's being cooked? You know that smell? What does it do to you when you get that smell? It makes you say, I can't wait to eat this thing, it smells so good. So what does Rabbi Cordozo say in this article about the korbanot that we had the opportunity to bring in the Beit HaMikdash? He says, this was our opportunity to think about a concept, that the smell of the offering through the korbanot that I'm about to bring to Hashem is a foreshadowing or is something that's going to help show that later on I will follow this good smell with good actions. And boys, when we lost the Beit HaMikdash not once but twice, we lost that opportunity. We lost the idea of home, and it affected our identity. And so some people might say, but coach, you know, Israel is ours again, and I can go visit freely whenever I want, and maybe it's not so bad as what this holiday is painting it out to be. Maybe. But to really have a strong sense of identity and to really feel like this is my homeland and I feel safe and confident and secure in this place. Is it fair that every single time we visit or the people that live there, they have to sleep with one eye open because there might be rockets blasted in their houses? Is it fair that the house that we used to have called Beit HaMikdash is not there anymore? Boys, this is what today is about. It's about recognizing that we are not complete. There is something that's missing about our identity, and if we can start to understand it and we can start to wrap our head about what it is that we're missing, what it is that's lacking with our identity, it might help us make the stay a little bit more meaningful. So sports teams are very creative when it comes to identity. They have certain customs that allow us to fully embrace and to really recognize that individual team. So I'm wondering if anybody in this room can give me an example of a sports team that you know of that has something special about their team that enhances their identity. Michael, the Warriors, okay, what do they have about their identity? Okay, so that's the players that they have. Good thought, but we're talking about specifically about the team itself. Doesn't matter what players they have. I'll share one example and then I'll allow you guys to speak. The Pittsburgh Steelers have something called a terrible towel. And they wave it around and around and around and around. And when you wave that towel, that's you understanding and embracing the team's identity. So does anybody else have an idea about something that teams have that make us understand their identity? Eddie. Okay, what's their mascot? A Bronco. Good. Okay, great. Aslan? Whoa, right, yeah, we do that. Good. Elliot?
Oh my gosh.
Green Bay Packers, what do they have? Cheesehead, okay, good. I actually wrote down they have the Lambeau Leap, something that they do. Jojo? Seahawks have the 12th man flag, very good. They're the loudest stadium in America. Ronnie? The Buckeye Suns have Coach Ali, okay. Claude? Great. So some other examples, the 76ers, they like to ring the Liberty Bell before each game because they're in Philadelphia. The Red Sox have the Green Monster. Okay? So certain teams have built into their stadiums and have built into their culture certain ideas that help build up their identity so that you understand where they are and you feel at home when you're at these places. Another idea that helps us establish identity is when we play on a team, the team has a certain scheme. They have certain philosophies about what type of team they want to be. Any ideas about what this looks like? What type of schemes have you participated in when you played on a team? So for example, basketball team might have a run and gun offense where they look to push and it's a very fast-paced team because potentially they're very athletic and they're very fast. Aslan. Buckeye Suns have a Lakers triangle offense, very good. Anybody else? Eli? Ronnie this. So basketball teams might also have a half-court offense. Teams might want to slow things down if their teams are bigger and are slower. Henry? Syracuse, good. In football, you have something called ground and pound, right? Teams that you know that their identity is that they want to run the ball, they want to be tough, they want to be physical. You might also have a shotgun offense, right? Where instead of running it a lot, the quarterback moves away from the linemen and the receivers are always going out for passes. In baseball, you may have teams that build themselves around the deep ball and who can hit home runs, and other teams that might play small ball, where they look to get singles and steals and get runs a cheap way. So here's the idea, and here's the purpose about why we're talking about schemes and identity. What you do and how you do it allows you to understand and give meaning to whatever it is that you're doing. So on this day, the Chachamim established certain laws and customs that allow us to have a better understanding about what it is that we should be feeling and doing on this day. So anybody have answers? What are the laws and customs on a day like today? What are we not allowed to do? What should we refrain from doing? Elliot. No eating or drinking, good. No leather shoes. No swimming. Not supposed to be happy. Good. Anybody else? Ronnie? No washing. No new clothes. Okay. Claude. Go shopping. Okay, some other ideas is we don't wear tefillin. We refrain from working. Another one that very few people know about that I learned the hard way because I thought that people just didn't like me anymore. Not really not supposed to say hello to people, to greet them, to acknowledge them. We sit on the floor during some of the prayers during this day. Let's move on to item number 2, and then we'll revisit the last idea. Process. For those of you that have been in my home class, you know that I'm very big into process. But I want to ask you guys a question. Did you ever wonder why it is that your parents have the jobs that they have, or maybe why you have certain skills that other friends don't, and other friends have certain skills that you don't? Can somebody give me an example about a job that their parent has? Look, what is that doing? Makes children's wear. Anybody else? Travel agent. Anybody else? Michael. I can't hear you. He makes blankets. Henry.
My mom's the principal.
Mom's a principal. Ronnie. Mom's also a principal. Eddie. Sells women's clothes. So here's the question. Isn't it weird that you're going to grow up in life and maybe you don't get to decide what it is that you do in life for a living? Some people maybe. But what if I wanted to be a lawyer? What if I wanted to be a president? What if I wanted to be a doctor and I wasn't? Does that mean something to me? Is that a negative reflection about who I am as a person? And if you understand the process, then you understand the following message. And listen carefully to this one because this is going to help us really understand the day. What you do is not as important as how you do it. Because not everybody in their lifetime will have the opportunity to maybe help a medical case if they're not a doctor. And not everybody will have the opportunity to establish halakha if they're not a rabbi. But that doesn't take away with my ability to contribute to society. It doesn't take away my ability to have a meaningful life. But how I do it is something that's universal that every single person on the planet can do. Doesn't matter what you do for a living. And so some of these values might look like, are you respectful? Are you considerate? Are you honest? Are you sensitive to the world around you? Can you collaborate and work with others? I don't care what you do for a living. I don't care what skill set you have. Every single person on the planet has the opportunity and the unique privilege to recognize an appreciation for what God has given us and to be thankful for the life that we live. There's a story about a man who was very frugal with money. He was very cheap with his money. And he recognizes that his days are numbered and he eventually will pass. And he tells his wife, I have one request before I die. I want to be buried with my money. I worked really, really hard for my money and I want to go with it. So this is my one request. When I go, in the casket, you're going to put my hard-earned cash in it with me. The wife was very bothered, very perplexed. What kind of a request is this? It's my husband. I want to honor his last request before he goes. Fast forward, we're at the funeral. And the wife is sitting there next to a friend. And the friend had known about this request, and the friend is like so bothered, and she tells the wife, what's wrong with you? How could you honor such a request? It's such a slap in the face. He didn't respect your relationship. This is the only thing he could think of? Bury me with my money? The wife answered very simply. This is what he asked, and I loved him. So I honored the request. She says, you did it? You really did it? Of course I did. I went to the bank. I transferred all the money into my account, and I wrote him a check, and I placed it in the casket. And if and when he has the opportunity to cash it, it's there for him if he wants it. And so the message of this story is very simple. You can go through life in one of two ways. You can focus on what it is that you're doing, and you can focus on the what. So I have to fast on Tish'a BeAb, I have to do homework, I have to listen to my parents. Or you can focus on the how. You can focus on the why. You can say to yourself, how is it that I should be fasting? You can say to yourself, why is it important for me to do homework, and how is this going to help me later on? So let's revisit the laws and customs of the day, right? We spoke about no eating and drinking, we spoke about no washing, we spoke about, who could remind me, what else did we speak about? Laws of the day, who remembers? Marvin. So laws and customs of the day, right? No eating and drinking, no washing, no leather shoes, right? So who can tell me, why do you think we have these? Why did the Chachamim establish that these were the laws and the customs of the day? Any ideas? What should this do to us? Henry?
Let us out of our comfort zone and make us feel worse than we usually do.
Okay, Henry says it should make us feel worse than we typically feel. Ronnie? It should make us have a better understanding of the day. Very good. Anybody else? Claude? Should make us feel more hungry to do more mitzvot so we can bring back the Beit HaMikdash. Any other thoughts? So some ideas I wrote down were, it should help us feel sad for what's missing. It should prevent us from feeling like today is just another day, because it's not. It should help us replicate what it's like to mourn the loss of a loved one. It should help us further appreciate our love for the land of Israel, and it should help unite all Jews around our country. Let's go to the third and last idea about how to make today a more meaningful day. Teamwork. What are some thoughts that come to mind about what makes a good teammate? Any thoughts? Claude, what makes a good teammate? What makes a good teammate? Okay, somebody who trusts me and believes in me. Marvin? So somebody who always has faith in me, doesn't doubt me, even though I may mess up during the game. Any other ideas? Marvin? Very good. Eli? Somebody that always has my back. Somebody who shows respect. Very good. Anybody else? Ronnie? Somebody who makes me a better player. Excellent. So a good teammate, we'll just review really quick, somebody who makes me a better player, a leader, somebody who can motivate, somebody who knows how to get others involved. I want you to recognize something. Not one point during this conversation did we mention anything about an individual accomplishment. We didn't say that a good teammate is somebody who can score 40 points. We didn't say a good teammate is somebody who's going to lead their team in statistics. We said none of that. And I want to be honest with you, sometimes during this day, at least for me in my lifetime, it was very difficult. And I would say things to myself like, this is so difficult, I'm so hungry. Or I would say things like, but I don't even understand why this is meaningful to me. I don't live in Israel. And this stuff happened such a long time ago. What is it that this has to do with me in my life? And why can't I just eat? Because I'm hungry. You know, I always found it funny how before teams will play in a matchup, they'll show on the TV and the broadcasters will talk about it, the history of the matchup between these two teams. And I always have the same question every time I see this on TV. What on earth does this have anything to do with today? Okay, big deal. Over the last 80 years, this team beat that team 52 times. But how is that relevant to today? The players that are in this game had nothing to do with the statistics that you're showing me on the TV screen. So why are you showing this to me? How does this help me? This has no indication about what's going to happen today. We have different players, it's a new day, and it should have no effect on what it is that's going on. But the mental side to sports is something that has a very heavy influence. Just look at Space Jam. The Monstars are crushing Michael Jordan and the Looney Tune cast. And all of a sudden, Bugs has a great idea. We're going to drink some special stuff. And all of a sudden, the Monstars went from crushing to being crushed because they drank water that was labeled special stuff. We need to understand something. Because when they look at the statistics and they say, oh, this is the history, sports is bigger than one individual. Doesn't matter who's on the floor, you can be the best player on the planet. Maybe his name is LeBron James. Up for opinion for a different time and discussion. But sports is bigger than one individual. It's about team, it's about collaboration, and it's about history. And we need to have that same focus and that same idea when we go through a day like today. Fasting is not about you, and it's not about what you can feel about how it affects you as a person. It's about how do you fit into something that's bigger than yourself. You as part of a collective nation of Am Yisrael. That's what today is about. It's about understanding that collectively as a nation, we are hurting. We feel that there's something that's incomplete about who we are, about our identity. And it's not about you and feeling the need to eat because you walked by Auntie Ann's pretzel shop and you got a nice whiff of pretzels. That's not what today is about. And so if we go through this day only focusing on us, then yeah, it's going to be very, very difficult for us to really appreciate and to understand what's designed in this day. But if we can understand that some things are bigger than us, we are one individual that's a part of a bigger nation. Did you ever think about it, how amazing it is that every single Jew on the planet today is doing the same exact thing, the same exact way? It's unbelievable. How, with all of the differences that we have in society today, this person believed the halakha should look like this guy believed the halakha should look like that. But on this day, we put all of that aside. And it doesn't matter what you look like, where you come from. Every single person today is collectively suffering and feeling the same exact pain. Today is not just about you, it's about being part of something bigger than yourself. But we got to make it through the day. Because at the end of the day, we're hungry. and we just want to eat. So let me help you with that. I want you to understand just how special the human body is, because sometimes we take it for granted and we don't realize how amazing and awesome it is. And we can just look back, just a month ago, we saw some soccer players trapped in a cave in Thailand. They had no food for 2 weeks. They survived. They figured it out. They're okay. You can be okay too. And I know some of you haven't fasted yet, and eventually you'll get there, but for those of you who are fasting and who have experienced fasting, I'm going back to when I was younger, when I had to first fast for the first time. And it feels like the world is coming to an end, right? 10 minutes before the fast starts, everybody's in a panic in the house. Oh my God, what should I do? Should I brush my teeth? Should I have watermelon? Doctor says I'm supposed to have sugar. No, you should have salt. And everyone's freaking out about what it is that they should be doing. It's like when it's snowing outside and the forecast says it's going to be a crazy snowstorm. So your mother goes to the supermarket, she buys like 20 cases of water, even though we have water in the house already. She buys like 7 pounds of salt. There's a snowstorm coming, it's crazy. And we get into this panic about how are we going to fast? I don't understand. It's crazy. And we start freaking out. And so to go through a day like today and to have the fast be meaningful, we need to calm down. We need to be less anxious, and we need to understand that you will be okay. The day will come and the day will go without food, and you will be just fine. And if you could stop thinking about the food that you want to eat for a second, and you can start to appreciate that the hunger is causing you to feel something about your identity, about the process, about how you fit into a bigger picture within society, bigger than you as an individual, then perhaps the day could be meaningful for you. And perhaps a day like today can make you feel a stronger sense of identity with our nation of Eretz Israel. And it can help make today a day that we appreciate and that is meaningful for us. So to review, and then we'll close. We recognize that practice is important, but most of us choose not to use it. We don't feel intrinsically, we don't feel that individual motivation, and so we rely on external forces. Hello? We created those forces for you. You can't eat, you can't drink, you're not brushing your teeth, you didn't wear tefillin, you're not learning Torah, you're refraining from saying hello to people. We are creating the external forces for you because we know that innately it's difficult for you to feel it. And so when we go through that process, and when we understand why we're doing it and not what we're doing, right? It bothers me, it gets me so crazy, right? Right before the fast. Can we have Listerine strips? Could we do this? Could we do that? Stop focusing on the what, because the what is not relevant. Focus on the how, focus on the why, focus on why we're not doing some of these things. And understand that it's there to make the experience more meaningful. And then lastly, understand that you are an individual and this is something bigger than you, and that you will be okay. The soccer players in Thailand were able to figure it out. You will too. I hope you have a meaningful day. Shabbat Shalom.